Tensions between America and Saudi Arabia escalating this week, with the White House accusing the Saudis of, quote, coercing its allies to cut oil production and side with Russia.
So President Biden threatens consequences for Saudi Arabia after they decided to cut global oil production.
The world's largest oil producer, Saudi Arabia, is reportedly asking to join BRICS.
Well, analysts continue to speculate on the implications of an international reserve currency planned by Russia and China.
The regional bloc, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has been touted as a serious counterweight to the Western-led world order.
Forget new allies. Even old friends of the West are ditching it, like Saudi Arabia. First, it refused to ramp up oil production for the European Union, and now it wants to be a part of BRICS.
In a dramatic turn of events, Saudi Arabia, once a powerful and loyal ally to the United States, has found itself engaged in a cold war with its former friend. As tensions escalate, Saudi Arabia has decided to decrease oil production by 2 million barrels, a move that threatens to worsen inflation in the United States. In response, President Biden has threatened Saudi Arabia with consequences and even proposed a bill that could challenge the security of the country. In a bold move, Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman has requested to join the BRICS alliance, a group comprised of India, Russia, and China. This request has sent shockwaves through the United States, as the BRICS alliance has the potential to shift the balance of global power. To add to the tension, Vladimir Putin has announced the creation of a new world currency called the BRICS currency, which would be beneficial for India, Russia, and China. As this critical geopolitical situation unfolds, it raises many important questions. What is the BRICS alliance, and how will Saudi Arabia's entry change the dynamics of global power? What is Putin's idea for the BRICS currency, and how will it impact India, Russia, and China? How will the United States respond to these developments? This is a sample of the questions that we will try to answer together in today's video. But before that, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to support us in creating more high-quality videos for you. Now let's dive in. The BRICS alliance, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is an alliance of the 5 largest emerging economies in the world. While it may be tempting to underestimate the power of these countries because they are emerging economies rather than developed economies like those in the G7, it is important to consider their significant size and influence. Together, these 5 countries make up 41% of the world's population and have a combined GDP of over 24.4 trillion US dollars. They also have substantial military capabilities and are increasingly influential on the global political stage. By coming together, the BRICS alliance is able to advocate for the concerns of developing economies on the global stage. For example, they can challenge policies that are designed to benefit the West at the expense of developing countries, such as the carbon tax. The European countries often complain about the carbon emissions of the Indian and Chinese steel industry and plan to impose a carbon tax on these countries when their products enter the international market in 2030. However, this graph clearly shows the hypocrisy of these developed countries, as they themselves are largely responsible for climate change due to their high carbon emissions during their own development phase. Despite this, they are imposing a carbon tax on emerging countries that desperately need economic fuel to grow. In addition, there is economic and military cooperation within the alliance. Given the economic and development assistance offered by the BRICS alliance, as well as its ability to advocate for the interest of emerging countries and challenge policies that favor the West, it is clear why so many countries are interested in joining the BRICS alliance. But now let's try to understand the reasons behind Saudi Arabia's desire to join the BRICS alliance. You see, everything started when the Russia-Ukraine war began and the price of oil skyrocketed. However, as time passed, the price of oil started to drop and eventually fell below pre-war levels. This caused concern for the Saudis and OPEC countries, who were worried that a recession could lead to a further drop in the price of oil. In order to increase their revenue and stabilize the market, they decided to cut production by 2 million barrels per day. As a result, the price of oil rose from $91 per barrel to $94 per barrel. While this move was beneficial for the OPEC countries, it created chaos in the West. The petrodollar agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia has been seriously jeopardized by President Biden's threats of consequences and a bill to stop weapons trade. The agreement made between Franklin Roosevelt and the Saudi king promised that Saudi Arabia would sell oil in dollars, while the US provided security to the kingdom. The US breaking its side of the agreement has caused outrage in Saudi Arabia, leading the kingdom to use its resources to undermine the US dollar. Additionally, examination of data from the past 3 years shows that Saudi Arabia has already begun making defense deals with China and Russia in order to reduce its dependence on the US. Secondly, the Biden administration is looking to revoke the economic sanctions imposed on Iran, a Saudi nemesis in the Middle East. The third and most important reason is the oil consumption of the BRICS countries. China, Brazil, and India are the largest consumers of oil in the world. And if Saudi Arabia joins BRICS, it will have the support of the biggest consumers of oil. These are the reasons why Saudi Arabia is eager to be part of the BRICS alliance. This brings us to a very crucial question. What will happen if Saudi Arabia joins BRICS? The first thing that is likely to occur is a crisis for the US economy. The US bank interest rates will spike, potentially leading to disaster. But what does Saudi joining BRICS have to do with the US bank interest rates? Well, we'll tell you. The petrodollar system, in which oil is primarily purchased in US dollars, has helped to establish the dollar as the dominant global currency. As a result, countries around the world keep large amounts of US dollars in their foreign exchange reserves, which are often held in American banks mainly to buy oil, while using the surplus dollars for other trade purposes or to invest in the US economy through the purchase of the US Treasury bonds. And just like that, the countries of the world keep their surplus dollar reserves invested in the US economy. And according to the Federal Reserve and US Department of the Treasury, foreign countries held a total of $7.5 trillion in US Treasury securities as of July 2022. These funds are then used by US banks to lend to American businesses at low interest rates, enabling American businesses to prosper and the economy to grow. So Saudi Arabia selling its oil for US dollars gives the US a significant advantage of $7 trillion. However, if Saudi Arabia were to join BRICS, they could sign a bilateral currency swap agreement allowing BRICS countries to bypass the requirement to purchase oil in dollars. This would potentially diminish the advantage the US currently holds and potentially harm the US economy. Additionally, China has already developed a prototype for an alternative international payment network called mBridge. This prototype is intended to be an alternative to the current system, SWIFT, and allows for international transactions to be made using central bank digital currency. This project is being developed in collaboration with the BIS Innovation Hub at the Hong Kong Center, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, the Bank of Thailand, the Digital Currency Institute of the People's Bank of China, and the Central Bank of the United Arab Emirates, as well as 20 banks in Hong Kong, Thailand, mainland China, and the UAE. The mBridge platform has already been used to conduct 164 payments and foreign exchange transactions totaling over $22 million. If this prototype is successful, it could pose a challenge to SWIFT. In response, the US has begun exploring the development of its own digital dollar. So if Saudi Arabia were to join BRICS and sign bilateral currency swap agreements, allowing them to trade with India and China using a currency other than the US dollar, it would be a significant blow to the US. India and China are the two largest consumers of oil in the world, and if they are no longer using dollars to trade, it could undermine the US dollar. China alone holds $1 trillion worth of US bonds, and if they stop buying oil in dollars, they could potentially sell those bonds, potentially harming the US economy. All of this leads us to the most important question of all. How will Saudi Arabia's entry into the BRICS alliance impact the global balance of power? Are you ready for the biggest shakeup in the global financial system in half a century? Because it's coming, and it's called the BRICS currency. According to Russian President Vladimir Putin, this new currency will function like a basket containing the value of the Chinese renminbi, Russian ruble, Indian rupee, Brazilian real, and the South African rand. This basket approach will make the currency semi-decentralized and more stable than the US dollar. But that's not all. There are reports that this new currency could be backed by gold, giving it even more power and stability. Just think about it. A gold-backed currency means that its value is tied to gold. For example, if the Chinese yen were to become gold-backed, the value of the yen will be defined such that 1 gram of gold equals 500 yen. That means if you give 5,000 yen to the People's Bank of China, they would redeem in value by giving you 1 gram of gold. But with a flat currency like the US dollar, it's not backed by any commodity, it's simply backed by faith of its holders and a virtue of a government declaration. And as we know, this will always lead to inflation because governments always end up printing too much money. So as a trader, you can have more confidence in the value of your trades with a gold-backed currency. That's reportedly one of the reasons why BRICS countries have been buying gold at such high levels. It's not clear yet how the BRICS currency will function as an international currency, but if it is successful, it could be the first currency backed by gold in half a century. And if Saudi Arabia were to join the BRICS group, the currency could also potentially be backed by oil, which would make it even more valuable. The entire world is watching closely to see what Saudi Arabia does and how it will change change the global order with the BRICS group. If everything goes well, the BRICS currency could be supported by two of the most valuable commodities on the planet, gold and oil. This would give the alliance and currency even more strength. Now don't say we didn't warn you. The BRICS currency is coming and it could change everything. Now as we come to the end of this video, I'd like to get your opinion on a few important questions. Could the BRICS currency potentially challenge the dominance of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency? If the BRICS currency were to be backed by gold or oil, would this make it more appealing to investors and traders? And finally, how might the US react to all of this? We will see.